Imagine for a second that you had penetrated 40% of your target market in e-commerce. That is the story of Veiled, run by CEO Kareem L. Gendi. Really fascinating business that is now leading to a bunch of other businesses being created. This is a true profit monster episode. Kareem has built something really incredible at Veiled, which sells modest apparel, including hijabs, but not limited to hijabs, to Muslim women. And so it's a really interesting business targeting a particular community with particular values, and they've had incredible success at it. They're opening their first retail store. They're incubating other brands. They've got their own 3PL. This is no joke of a business, multiple 8 figures, profitable. Let's get into it. You're going to learn a lot from Kareem L. Gendi from Veiled. Kareem, thanks for taking the time, and I'm super excited for this conversation. Man, we were introduced by a mutual friend, and I'm just really fired up about this. So thanks for taking time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me here. I'm excited.
All right, let's talk about Veiled a little bit. I and I'm sure many of my listeners and viewers on this podcast are not Muslims, and so help us understand a little bit about sort of the core product and the core customer. And what I'd actually really love you to focus on in there is why you were able to reach, as I said in the intro, 40% of this market. So I think people who, people are not living under a rock, whether they're Muslim or not, understand there's some different clothing and standards related to religious convictions, not only in Islam, but in other religions. And so that I think makes some sense. But what I'm actually really curious to hear you talk about is how you've been so successful about seeing, a pathway to reaching so many of your target customers within that. Like, what is different and better and has helped you to do that at the core of the product and the customer?
There's definitely a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, huge question.
I think what's interesting is that, so Nora Shamma, she's the founder. Actually, her and her husband started the company. They're the original founders of Veiled back in 2016. The first modest wear brands that were serving the Muslim market emerged around like 2012, 2013. Even like the big global like e-tailers like Modanisa, that's kind of like when they all started back in like, the early 2010s. So what caused the emergence of that and why did that happen to align with the advent of like e-commerce? Well, it's because, essentially like Muslim women in Western markets are looking for a new type of fashion that is modest, but also modern. And the way that like you can kind of start to capture a more homogenous community that's spread out, that's so dispersed in something like the US or like the UK, et cetera. E-commerce is a great tool for that. So that's why it's like no surprise to me that like, with the advent of e-commerce and e-commerce becoming as popular as it has become, is kind of like when you start to see these brands emerge. And I think that's the same for any kind of niche kind of business that has like this new distribution channel and medium where you can kind of reach very targeted audiences and cater to them specifically. So that was the like kind of genesis, but we were not the first. We just happened to approach it in a way that was really sophisticated from a digital, marketing and like growth strategy perspective.
Okay. So is there anything, do you think at the level of like, it's interesting. You're making this about sort of distribution possibilities with e-com, the ability to go straight to a customer, no matter where they are. Of course, there's going to be pockets of communities and stuff like that. And sometimes people are just going to be spread all over, a mix of those kinds of things where your customers are. Algorithmic content is going to make this simpler to reach people within, obviously certain, interests and values and things like that. I'm curious though about the product itself, how much this comes down to sort of the ability to stand out at the level of design and some of that, because I think from outsiders, people might not like think about something like modest wear having nonetheless like a real fashion component. It's very clear when you go to your site, when you go to veiled.com, it's like, it's a fashion website, and yeah, I think probably people who are not Muslim, maybe, I don't know, maybe don't understand that element.
Yeah. So definitely there's a little bit of like a misunderstanding around the Muslim community. And like, I spoke with a potential investor at one point. We've been completely bootstrapped, by the way, which is another interesting thing about the company. But at one point we were kind of possibly seeking an investment, looking into doing like B2B and retail, and speaking with this guy who is very well-known VC and very involved in like CPG retail. And he asked me, he's like, can't they just go and borrow these garments from like the mosque, And it's like, there's just a complete misunderstanding of Muslim women and the fashion that they seek. And the other thing with Veil that I should say as a disclaimer is like, we're not proselytizing in any way. We're just filling in the gaps in the wardrobe between like, very revealing clothing and clothing that covers you like all the way up. And we have a lot of those variations on that spectrum. And it's up to our customer to choose like how she wants to cover up. We launched a retail store recently. And if you go into the store, not every girl in there is wearing a hijab, just as an example, right? So there isn't like a very distinct or super clear archetype. There's obviously like a general inclination towards covering up more. But there's a lot of variation there, which does make it difficult to enter from like a fashion design standpoint because of the variability and understanding those nuances. But then the part that's kind of straightforward is like, if you're in the US and you're in the mall and there are certain fabrics and materials that are trending, we have those materials and fabrics, but we're just, the silhouette's a little bit different. The trims might change. We also have a little bit of a take on like, we have our own stylistic sense of like, what are the colors, like Veiled is a little more streamlined, minimalist, and like, in just like agnostic of like the religious component, just like as a fashion brand.
That's very helpful. No, that's exactly what I was asking. It's very helpful. Thank you. I want to stay on this notion of like, I actually think there are a lot of brands who are building for some kind of a subculture feels like the wrong word, because when you're talking about a religious community, it's not quite a subculture, but where there's communities that have a distinct set of values based on a number of things. I mean, honestly, one of the things I was thinking of like jokes about, CrossFit, which is sort of past its heyday, but in its earlier days of people comparing it to religion, and there would be a set of things that are like sort of in that community, even from a non-religious perspective, that like sort of almost look like that, where it's like these values that are shared by most members. And so then if you're going to build, a food product for that community, man, it better hit your macros correctly or whatever, there's like these little distinctions. So I think there's a lot of people who can relate to the idea that there's a particular culture, particular community, whether it's an interest level or something even stronger and more core to people's value sets than that. And so I'm curious if you have any reflections broadly on how you think about that from a marketing perspective. This might be too broad of a question. Just tell me if it is. But sort of how can you help people thinking about that? Because the penetration you guys have had has been so massive to get to 40%. I'm curious, to hear you reflect a little on that element.
I think what's cool is I think if Veiled had more of a take, like a religious take on the fashion, I actually think we would not be nearly as successful. And that's because we do have to understand a little bit like from a religious lens, like even in the religion itself, there isn't kind of like a mandate on like, you must dress this way. It's kind of like everyone it's very personal, and it's like, but women who happen to be Muslim, they just choose to cover up to whatever degree, and obviously there's like, I'm very well aware of a lot of the controversy, especially like in certain countries overseas and like different things that are in the law, but that doesn't actually translate to the religion. So now when you're in a free country or society like in the US or like the UK, the expression has a little bit more freedom in terms of fashion and everything else. And that actually is the true nature of it. Which there's that within the Muslim context, but also the fact that Veiled does get a lot of customers who are from all different faiths. And so there's just like a proclivity that happens to over-index like with Muslim women in terms of wanting to cover up more, but that might just be a proclivity that exists generally throughout. And so we can't talk about the marketing without talking about like the product. But now that we kind of have that layer, now it's just putting on display, like, in a way that is exciting, that's fashion forward. And so anyone who is looking for a beautiful way to cover up more, Veiled is a great option for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Is, you in the midst of like sort of these product and customer components of it and community components, there's also another part of your story, which is this like whole element of essentially strategic and tactical excellence. And so I want to move there a little bit because
Excellent.
it's sort of easy.
Excellence makes me very bashful, but go on.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I mean by that. I mean, when I see you have floated to me numbers that I think you said I could share, like you're running at an MER over 10 year to date. You were previously not profitable or break even, but you took it to 15% EBITDA. Well, you're launching a 3PL that's like reaching capacity really fast. You're doing all these things that reflect some deep down work in the organization itself. So, while it's easy, especially for somebody who's not a Muslim, to kind of get like interested in the like, okay, there's a really particular element of the product and the customer here. Like I want to dive into the sort of the more translatable strategic stuff at the level of just e-commerce and some of that. So maybe you can talk first about the move from break even to profit. Like what was required for you to accomplish that? Because if you're growing at the rate that you're growing at, opening up retail stores and at the same time increasing your profitability and living at this extremely high MER, like I think that's a sort of fascinating thing. So can you start with what's been the core of getting profitable for you guys?
Yeah, I think analytics, really good, well-defined analytics, dashboards, reports. I'm very lucky that, between the three of us, the three executives, I can just focus on this all day because I have Yasser who operates all of our logistics and like warehousing. We do our own fulfillment. You mentioned the 3PL. We are also, expanding staff and resources into that. So that whole world is kind of delegated. The whole world of being creative and product, even though I love that, I used to be an architect. I can talk about, the fashion, but Noura being just like the spirit of the brand and like creating the brand initially for herself and being able to focus on that. And I could just focus on the numbers and the efficiencies all day long, which has been just awesome. Like I'm aware of like other operators that kind of have to wear so many different hats. I do wear a lot of hats, but I can really just focus and hone in on that. But in a nutshell, you need to be able to look at your numbers every single day. You need to understand them in a way that's logical. I still find a lot of operators, even at my scale, are larger, getting stuck there, like in understanding what's actually happening with their business when sales are not quite there. There are different paradigms that I have when it comes to being able to recognize where their performance is lacking because of a demand issue versus like a supply issue, which, I mean, the number of conversations I have where I'm noticing the operator doesn't even really understand, like, they're blaming a supply issue on Facebook ads or vice versa. There's still like a little bit of a lag in competence that I'm finding when it comes to e-commerce. And it's no fault to the operators, but it's more just like a combination of, the way a lot of like agencies and service providers measure results and, provide insights and feedback, and the operator having to deal with so many things, as is the nature of this business, the lack of sophistication in e-com because of the lack of funding and the lack of support there that you would have like someone in tech, and you could put the right resources and systems and I'm sure you're well aware of all of this, these kind of challenges. So I think we're a little bit fortunate that we were able to dedicate someone to focusing on that and building a team. Like I have a full stack developer on staff. I have a full-time analyst. I have multiple engineers that work on this backend and data engineers and so on and so forth. And that we were able to master this as the business grew. And I think that's the biggest, like, in a nutshell, like reason for our success. I'm happy to dive into like certain specifics, but it is quite broad.
If you are the kind of person that is nodding along with Kareem in this conversation because of his commitment to analytics and data driving his decision making to operate with that level of commitment and excellence, then you are the kind of person who will love working with INTELLIGEMS on your website. INTELLIGEMS is a tool that literally all of my clients use, and they use it for the same reason, which is that INTELLIGEMS gives you unprecedented ability to test the things that really matter most to your brand and your customers on your website, and then to measure the performance of those tests based on the actual profit it drives in your business, not just conversion rate, average order value, whatever. INTELLIGEMS is is like a CRO tool, but they don't even like the words CRO. They don't like the phrase when you talk to the people in INTELLIGEMS, because when you hear CRO, sometimes you think changing a headline, changing a button color, whatever, and that is not what INTELLIGEMS is primarily for. It is testing beyond the basics, testing things that really move the needle, like the price of your products, like a full Shopify theme split test. Like if you're doing a full redesign, you could do that. How about your free shipping threshold, your shipping charge to your customers, how much you're charging for shipping, site-wide offers. This is one that I think like basically every brand ought to have INTELLIGEMS and should be testing, like the 10% off you offer to new customers versus no new customer discount versus a bigger new customer discount. Like what is actually going to drive the most value for your customers' sense of your products, and then therefore in your business at the level of profitability measured, again, not just by conversion rate, but how the offer uptake from your customers is driving profit in your business, including net of the discounts, net of the shipping costs, all those things. INTELLIGEMS is easy to get set up with, is the other wonderful thing about it. You can be up and testing very, very quickly. You don't need a developer, and you can start testing the things that are going to really move the needle. All the things I just mentioned, many more, and of course, also all your basic landing page testing needs, all those kinds of things as part of it as well. Go to intelligems.io, and use the code FARIS20, F-A-R-I-S 20, to get started with it today. You'll get 20% off your first 3 months. Intelligems.io, FARIS20, go get INTELLIGEMS, go get testing. I think it's a great starting point answer to the question, and I do want to dive into some specifics. So let me ask a couple follow-ups. The first is, one of the things I hear in that with the developer and analyst and engineers, like, is a higher investment in OpEx than many brands would do. And in fact, I've certainly been among the chorus of people preaching one of the things that make e-commerce work is low OpEx. But it sounds to me like you guys are, I mean, I don't know what your OpEx is as a percentage of revenue. It still might be totally reasonable, but like, it sounds like you are not trying to run it as thin as possible, but you're actively investing in infrastructure at the level of process and information that you think can help you. I'm curious how you've thought about that at a P&L level, and why you're willing to make those investments. I mean, you kind of just answered why you're willing to, but yeah, that is a lot of investment.
We're saving a lot of money on shipping, which is a huge variable cost, and fulfillment. We're saving a lot of money on the shipping, by the way. Well, first of all, like 3PL, most of its cost is like shipping. They're marking up your shipping. So that's one thing. And then the fulfillment, us owning our own fulfillment, owning it for the entirety of the business, tons of savings there. Our MER is super efficient. So now I can invest a little bit more in labor. My payroll is still like within reason. But rather than hiring, say, like a CFO, no, I'd rather hire someone who can help me build a custom ERP in-house that I then use to like pump and like, just a lot of trades between like engineering or systems development, like operational investment versus like outsourcing and spending a ton of money on, say more traditional hires. So yes, I'm a little bit over invested in operations and engineering, but I'm under invested in, traditional roles, because I'm able to automate and have a system that kind of covers that scope.
One of my theories about 3PL versus 1PL shipping is just that what you're saying is basically true, but the 3PLs also arbitrage they essentially, by doing a few things well, they make their prices competitive to doing it 1PL. And then when you add in that most people are not actually set up very well to run an efficient warehouse, and it's actually a big brain drain on their organizations and time suck, the net cost of the whole thing ends up being as good or better with the 3PL as it does by doing it yourself. So for most folks, I would encourage them to go to a 3PL, a good 3PL. You could do it as badly, of course, but that's what
and by the way, I have a 3PL operator, right? So
yeah.
But I mean, I've just noticed that as we've shopped around in the past with like 3PLs, and also this might be like an inefficiency in the way 3PLs operate, in the way that they need to make money. And there's a lot we could talk about, like in terms of technology and like how they go about doing the things that they do. But the number of businesses, whether it's us just comparing like the amount of savings we have, or like taking on new clients and comparing the cost they were paying with their 3PL and then versus us, I mean, it is just like kind of incredible. The amount of like bloated expenses and fees and things that like, 3PLs charge.
I've definitely seen that too, by the way. I've had like a brand that is messing with that for that reason. But part of what I hear in your answer too is that you have an executive over your essentially logistics, among other things, that is really good. You try. I mean, you're speaking of this person with immediate reference.
Yeah,
exactly right. So you're like, this person is not. So it's not the time suck brain drain on your time. It sounds like, because he is in control and doing a good job of those things. And so it seems to me that you have to choose, though, which is like, you either need to take the value of outsourcing as a way to stay lean on your internal team and focus on other things. Or if you're going to take it on for the sake of the cost savings, which are real if you can do it, right? Because again, the margin on the shipping costs themselves, which is a really big deal in e-commerce, right? Because core to the model is shipping the product to the customer's door. So it's a huge part of the cost structure of brands' unit economics. So so if you can save it, that makes sense. But it seems to me that you need the kind of investment that you're talking about, which is like somebody over it who is good and trustworthy and in the numbers and cares about it.
It's a very good point. Yes, there's a huge caveat for sure. And then I'm happy that you exposed it, because it would have been a completely different story if it was like something either I had to manage myself. I probably would have just, outsourced it. But because of the unique dynamic at Veiled in the org chart, we're fortunate to be able to just take it on ourselves.
If you are an operator of an e-commerce business trying to think about how to deliver your customers a great experience while saving costs for you, and of course that is what you were thinking about, you should be getting RICHPANEL for your customer service help desk software. Multiple of my clients are using RICHPANEL for their customer service help desk software, and that's because it is a built from the ground up with AI customer service help desk tool that is built to make it so that you can more affordably have your customer service be incredible. And more affordably, they are really willing to put RICHPANEL is really willing to put their money where their mouth is on that claim. If you are on Gorgeous or Zendesk, you can switch over to RICHPANEL, and they guarantee you at least a 30% savings when you switch over. On top of that, on average, they see a 30% reduction in customer tickets, and that's because their self-help customer service portal powered by AI is so good that they get your customers' answers to their questions very, very quickly and very, very easily. They also have an agent that responds to your Facebook comments and Instagram comments for you. They have tested this into oblivion to make sure it gives good quality answers on your public social media feeds, and it does, and it delivers them reliably. That is an amazing time saver and cost saver in your business. That alone is worth testing RICHPANEL for, because it's just so remarkable. And in all of that, RICHPANEL is very fast and easy to set up. They guarantee that you will be up and running with their software within 2 weeks of signing with them. They know you don't have a ton of time to waste, building this software, installing the software, getting used to it, training your team, all those things. They make it fast and make it easy for you because they know your time is valuable. Go to richpanel.com today to get started with it. Check it out today. Let's talk about other things. You referenced the importance of setting up dashboards and having data and numbers and living in those. Could not agree more. Love this point. I'm curious for you to pull out some specific observations. So like, it could be a really recent small example. It can be a bigger example in the history of the business. Tell me about a dashboard you have set up that exposed to you a number that you fixed and led to increasing profit.
Okay. I have a fun example. So there was a day that our MER just completely tanked. Nothing changed. Nothing changed in terms of my merchandising. Nothing changed in terms of like massive stuff that stocked out. Nothing I can point to that would be like a demand factor. Nothing I can point to that would be, a supply factor. But the thing is, nothing also changed on the demand side. Like none of our campaigns or anything really changed. But I knew for sure nothing changed on the supply side, like in terms of my website, my merchandising, my promotions. And for it to crash so suddenly was, a real anomaly. So I called up our media manager and I said, hey, I can't figure out what's going on here. Did anything possibly change upstream? Because I'm not noticing anything like on the website or, lower funnel. He's like, let me look into it and see. And turns out that Facebook had modified something. And what was happening was we have a very specific way of controlling the amount of money that we're investing in warmer audiences versus colder audiences. We're not just relying on Facebook's like standard optimization to dictate that. So we actually have different kinds of sidecar campaigns to influence that, so that we're more in favor of like warmer audiences. But that's another thing. And so this adjustment that happened on Facebook's end indirectly impacted the way that we were investing in the balance of like those warm versus colder audiences, a lot more in favor of the colder audiences. And that was like an overnight thing that no one really was like aware of. We switched it back, and like the MER came like literally right back. Like that day it started to improve, and then by the next day it was back. But like my sales almost went to zero overnight. And so a lot of what I do when I'm looking at the metrics, and I'm looking at very simple things. Like I'm just looking day over day, revenue, MER. MER is the first thing, because if MER is fine, I don't spend any more time. I just like exit the program and I'm doing other things that I need to do. So revenue, MER, that's good. Don't worry about anything. I'm looking at conversion rate. I'm looking at, which kind of like that implies a lot of the supply, because you'll notice that your conversion rate is probably double when your best items are in stock, and it's when they're not in stock, your conversion rate sucks. Or if you have a promotion running, your conversion rate also goes up. So there's a few like things that really influence the demand side. And then it's like, okay, CPM is like skyrocketing. Why? What happened? Like, am I bidding against more people for my audience? Is it just, are the creatives like, starting to falter? And then you can drill down further into what's happening and then take action. So that's what I do every day. Every day, I'm not waiting 2 days. I'm not waiting a week to talk to an agency. I have a dashboard. I look at it, and then we're being very proactive. Fortunately, for a long time now, because we've been doing this for a while, it's mostly just, everything is good and move on, which is cool. Like, it wasn't like that in the beginning, but it's very rare that I'm finding issues and then having to kind of triage and fix things over the last like year and a half.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question now that is going to sound like you're going to have the potential to offend me, and you're not. So I have an agency, very small agency, but I have an agency. But I've heard you say a few things now that have been both before we started recording and elsewhere. Before we started recording, I'm just gonna say this. Okay, so Kareem, you just let me know afterwards if we need to bleep this. All right, you said, "Oh, you were at Common Thread Collective. That's the only agency that I respect," or something like that, right? So there's that, and then not your bad. It's fine. You should tell me honestly what you think. Because you're not alone in this. Like,
I don't know. I didn't spend a lot of time like really just analyzing like all the different agencies. I don't know anything about your agency, but
it's fine. It's fine. I'm not offended.
Also, you were there, so it's like, if anything, that's an ode to you.
No, it's fine. Yeah. I was worried I was going to offend you about saying something wrong about Islam before we started. But no, it's agency talk. I'm not offended at all. I think it's a valuable perspective. And you've now said a couple of other things that have been negative towards vendors and agencies both. And it sounds to me, and this is actually what I care about, you have point of view. And I love talking to people with point of view, like with something like that. The worst interviews I do on here are people who don't really have a clear point of view on what's working and what they believe in. So almost certainly, whatever your point of view is on agencies or whatever, you're seeing something real, and that it's worth saying, right? So tell me about that. Maybe I'm over extrapolating a couple of your comments, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But it sounds like you have a pretty strong preference to keep things internal wherever you possibly can, and to not outsource. Is that right? And if so, why?
Not necessarily. I actually like to collaborate. So I like to keep as much of the executive decision-making in-house as possible. I really like to outsource with people who kind of fit into the paradigms that we have kind of established. I was never very confident in that, but just the more that we've scaled up, now I'm kind of in, and this isn't necessarily a good thing because it might actually slow us down or hinder us in the future. So I have to be really open-minded that like we might not always be like the sharpest when it comes to like overall executive decision-making, but the challenge I have with a lot of vendors is like when we're going through the sales process, they'll say like, okay, like we're going really deep here. Like, you're asking a lot of very technical questions. This is really taking a long time. And it's because it's hard for me to give up that kind of like executive decision making, or outsource it, or take on help. And then the other thing that we do is we experiment a lot ourselves in trying to do things at a more affordable level in-house before we give it up. So we'll experiment a little bit, say with like a new service or something, doing it in-house, see how it goes. If we can scale it in-house on our own, then we do that. And if not, then we'll go and find a partner. So I'll give you an example. There's a company called Flagship RTL. They do like merchandising, forecasting. We have a really sophisticated way of doing it, like to their own admission. And this is a company that's raised like a massive amount of money and phenomenal engineers. But I'm willing to give up forecasting on hijabs and accessories because it can be agentified. It can be done in an automatic way. But like on the clothing, there's a lot more nuance to it. And I'm not yet comfortable giving that up, just as an example. Like, so we're not always like all or nothing, but it's more like what parts fit. Okay, let's do that. Otherwise, give it up.
The other thing I hear there is just that, like, there's some things that are particularly important to your business that are more important to keep internally. For example, I would just imagine, because of the unique nature of your product, again, having this religious element of it, it would be really hard to get a regular marketing agency because of, and obviously it's still apparel and fashion. People could do it and you could communicate those things, but you'd probably want a Muslim or somebody who understands that community. You're really leading marketing efforts there.
Well, the agency that we're using only does analytics and media buying for us. We do all the creative in-house. So we have like
that's what I mean. Yeah. Like somebody, you could media buy for, I would have no problem media buying for you guys, I think. But like you wouldn't want my agency doing the creative. We don't have any Muslims who could do it, and it just feels too important, in that world. And in fact, fashion in general has these kind of elements of it that make it hard. But then also when you're talking about merchandising and like what products are in stock, I mean, I have like personally run fashion brands growth, and digital marketing where like you get the wrong product out of stock and you are dead. And it's a really, it like is a complete killer to your conversion rate
in stock, and you're also dead because you just
that's right
all your money.
That's right.
And you're stuck and you don't have cash
and you can't get rid of it. Yeah. So that kind of stuff, keeping those kinds of things, the creative for a modest wear brand targeting Muslim women primarily, that's something you're going to keep internally. That's too core to who you are. The analytics for your merchandising, especially where your cash is going for forecasting, you're too important. Keep that internally. Whatever to have these things outsourced. So I think that makes sense to me. Whereas it sounds like maybe, like you said, hijabs or something like that, where you're saying this is a little easier for us to do. We're a little more comfortable saying this is not the best use of our time. So again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's a little bit of what I hear in the way you're saying it. Yeah. Okay. What else? Give me another example of your analytics that you have done. So let me take a guess at one. All right. About part of your path to profitability. Tell me how much. What I'm actually interested in is sort of like where on the P&L to go from break even to 15% EBITDA means that some amounts of your P&L that was previously taken up with a cost became a source of profit. So I'm going to guess at where one of them is. And you tell me if this is right or wrong. One of my guesses is that growth naturally created this to some degree, in the sense that returning customer revenue has become a larger percentage of your revenue because customers are happy with your product. It's a really particular, I got to imagine again, like if you found a D2C brand in this space, particularly that you really trusted and loved, that as returning customer revenue represents a larger portion of your total revenue, you end up lowering ad spend as a percentage of revenue, sort of as a corollary. So that's one of my guesses. When I see a 10 MER for a fashion brand serving a niche community, my assumption is that over time that has happened naturally in the business. And so a larger investment earlier is going to pay off in that respect, almost like a subscription brand or something, probably not to that extreme, but you can tell me if I'm wrong, but something like that element of it. So that's my guess as to where one of them was.
Amazing. But you're exactly correct. Okay. Like our MER is actually improving year over year.
Yeah, right. Because
it's actually just really funny because everyone else's MER is like going down, where ours is improving year over year. The other areas that like we really tightened things up was content. We were spending so much money on content. Yeah, like production.
How did you do it? How did you tighten it?
Yeah.
How did you tighten that up?
we're not allowed to spend more than X dollars anymore. Like this is it. Like we can't keep scaling this. This can't be a variable expense. So we actually like killed it. There's two parts. There's two parts to content. There's like the campaign production, and then there's like the ecom production. So ecom shoots, we found a partner that does a really good job, shoots a ton of images. Apparel, as you know, like this stuff is just so expensive. So that was just like, we found a really good solution. And then for campaigns, we just became more savvy around there, and just like incentivize the team to just like sharpen the numbers a little bit around those investments. So that was a big one that brought down our overall marketing costs, and our marketing cost is also improving. Our shipping has gone down every single year because we're just negotiating with carriers at like volumes now that we didn't have access to before. And we introduced new carriers that we weren't using. Like a lot of people spoke really poorly about DHL eCommerce when we were thinking about different carriers that we could use. We tested them out. It was actually fine. We brought down our costs there. Then we negotiated with other carriers. We kept bringing down our costs. Our shipping costs have just been continuing to decrease.
Okay, let's stay there for a second. I have a lot of questions about this. This is like, I have fully fetishized the idea of negotiating your shipping rates down for a long time because I've heard people talk about this. One of the best e-commerce talks I've ever heard was a guy giving a talk about how they negotiate their shipping costs down. And it was really cool. His company had this like mission element to where they were going and like using their saved money on shipping costs to like immediately create a generosity outcome where they were like going and saving women from like horrible situations in these places all over the world. And so his talk was all about drawing a line between how they negotiate, how like he was motivated to keep negotiating down his costs so that he could turn the money into save lives. And it was like he had made this sort of mission connection. It was amazing. Anyway, it was a long time ago. I don't even know if it exists on the internet anymore, but it was really cool. But so since I heard that talk, I have always been like, this has got to be possible in some way to do because there are this is sort of natural market, but nobody negotiates their cost down. So first question, very specific. Was this possible at lower volumes, or is this basically just an economy of scale issue as like, at least as a baseline? Like, and what scale, how many orders did you have to get to, or whatever number you can give me, to where you could actually start making this material?
Interesting. I noticed like when we crossed the 100,000 order a year threshold, that's when we were able to come to the table with some of these larger carriers and actually meet like, the VPs at these companies and have a sit down and like start to negotiate. Because otherwise, like you're just going to get cheaper rates from Shopify out the box or ShipStation. If you're doing like the 1PL model, or your 3PL, right? But as like once you cross over like into the 100,000 orders, I think you get some negotiating power. And then what happens is once you're in, now everyone wants to talk to you and everyone is trying to undercut everybody else. I don't know, like it's a race to the bottom. I actually don't know how some of these carriers make any money. I mean, maybe some of them just don't. But we're constantly just like, we're printing out our PLD, which is package level detail report that has like, metrics on like, your average shipping costs, all that, and shopping it around with different carriers and coming to the table and negotiating and showing them our growth and just having those like discussions. And that's just been improving.
That's a good example of analytics creating the outcome, right? You said you just get down to the PLD. It's very similar. Roman Khan came on the podcast a while ago and talked about what they do at the supply chain level. And his basic answer for like how they get their supply chain costs cheaper and cheaper and cheaper was just like, you got to get your bombs and understand when you look at the bill of materials, like
but the thing is,
look at every element of it.
Yeah, but the reason we're able to do that is because we're doing our own fulfillment. So like if I'm working with a 3PL, I'm not going to be able, I probably won't, first of all, I don't have any access to negotiate my carrier rates really, unless the 3PL allows me explicitly to introduce my own carriers and to take on that cost. But a lot of people, they like the terms that they're getting with the 3PL and the carrier, et cetera. But, because I have access to that data readily and I can just pull it on a whim and just send that email out to the rep because I'm very busy doing a million things, right? So there's a little bit of like taking the time to actually do it and follow up and get, have those conversations that a lot of people are just like too busy to really do, or they don't really have access to the information to do it.
That again strikes me as like a way where investing in OpEx actually creates a unit economic benefit, so that it sort of creates a benefit on another part of the P&L. Which is, I think there's a couple ways to do it here. There's trade-offs to doing it. So,
can I say one more thing?
Yeah, please. I was going to ask you another thing about the shipping thing. So please do.
The biggest lever, which is just reducing our costing. Like going to China, we manufacture most of our stuff in China. Going there, sitting down with these manufacturers, talking to them, improving your terms. Like we've improved our costing like 30-40%. That's the biggest lever. That's by far the biggest lever. Without losing quality. And now my terms on average are like 25% down on deposit and then net 90 from receiving on the balance on average. Which is a huge cash flow hack, which is also a profitability hack in a way, because you're able to buy yourself kind of more time. You're able to invest more in things that matter to improve everything else across the whole unit economic spectrum. And so there's this like reinforcing phenomenon that's happening between cash flow and profitability that we didn't have the space or the flexibility to even pursue in the past, because we were just kind of like, in the past I was like shipping everything by air to get it here at the last minute because
of course. And then you're getting slaughtered at that point. Yeah. You're saying you didn't have the space in the past. What was preventing you from that space?
I mean, like the financial space.
Okay. Yeah. So tightening up the operations of the total business and things like forecasting your inventory allows you to move towards sea freight instead of air freight, which creates a dramatic cost savings, which then allows you to breathe a little bit, and then you can go turn around, get on a plane, go to China, do the negotiations. I love that. I actually have one more question about the shipping thing, then I'm going to come back to this. How much eventually were you able to save per order on shipping costs at the end? I'm wondering how big the opportunity is.
We're at like $2 an order right now, which is
like freight to customer?
Yeah, like net $2 less per order on average.
I thought you meant like you're shipping it for $2. $2 per order is a lot. That's
like
really
a 20-30% reduction.
Yeah. I think people get their shipping costs very wrong all the time. They make a couple of moves mentally that I think don't serve them very well. Okay, so you save a couple bucks. That's actually a lot per order. That's really good. Okay, so let's come back to China for a second. Couldn't agree more with this point, and think it's one of those things to do. Let me ask the same question I asked you about shipping, though. Was this doable for you at lower volumes? And I've sort of heard mixed things about this. Or is this also an aspect of scale? I'm tempted to just follow up, but I'll leave it there.
Yeah, there was an inflection point where it was kind of like, we knew that if we had, it was a chicken or the egg. If I have this, I'm going to blow up. We're going to get a lot of revenue. But I need that to prove to my vendor that this is worth it for them. So we just projected, we did some analysis, and we modeled out how we would be able to perform if they improved our terms. And I was like, look, you're going to make either this much, or this much. It was like, I just kept it simple, like 3 curves. And I was like, look, you guys have already seen a ton of growth from us. We're still on this, on this train. And look, I was very clear, and transparent about all the math, opened up the Excel file, the formulas, very, very, very honest with them. And that convinced enough of them to do it, which I was then able to leverage that to go to the ones who weren't as, willing, and be like, hey, look, these other guys are doing it. You should do it too. Otherwise, all my money is going to them. And in some cases, we actually had to reduce our spend with some of the suppliers. And then eventually they would come around and they'd be like, okay, fine. We'll give you, these terms. And then just going there regularly and sitting with them and meeting with them and, meeting their families and their workers.
Relationship, man. Yeah. I love that. This fits so well with what the smartest people in the space have told me repeatedly. That the smartest people I think of, Roman Khan, Maytab, Bogle, and then actually my friends at Move Supply Chain, who are based in the Philippines. And one of the things that they talk about, they've been a sponsor of the show for a while. They built the supply chain for the brand that I'm starting. And one of the things they talk about is one of the big advantages for us is that it's just an 1.5-hour flight from the Philippines. And so we can just go over there and meet as a member of your team all the time, and just be there. Yeah. And they all talk about the same thing. The relational component of it is real. Everybody tells me about, I've never been to China, but everybody tells me just that like you got really sophisticated people who get it when you put the numbers in front of them and who are like really, really smart and who are actually willing to work with you because there is really something in it for them, especially because manufacturing businesses are volume businesses. So if they can help you get volume, their margins increase, right? Maytab always points out that they often have access to better financing than you do in the US. And so they actually can front the terms if you can show that it's going to actually create more volume. It's sort of the trade-off works better for everybody. So yeah, I love that advice. It's like just reminder number 20,000, get on the plane, go over there, or get members of your team to go do it and be part of that. Yeah, it's really good. With that one, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, I said I love that. I love exactly how you framed it. Yeah, get on the plane, go there.
Yes, yeah. I even your comment like meet their families. It's like it's totally right. Like these are just humans.
Yeah.
They care about things like you do. And in the end, what also ends up I hear all the time is just how grateful U.S.-based businesses are for their partners in China who really do care about them and care about their business and are real partners in the business.
The ROI on sending just like a really thoughtful gift on like a Chinese holiday, just that alone is insurmountable.
I love that. That's a really, really good call. So let me actually come back to the numbers you mentioned because it's a cash flow thing, especially in apparel where cash management is so hard. So you're now, just to repeat it, you're at 25% down, correct me, and 90-day net terms for the other 75%?
90 days net from receiving in our warehouse.
For receipt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's on the other 75%. Yeah. Of the cost. That is fantastic. Was there an intermediary step? Somewhere in there?
All the stuff. Like, all right, let's get 30% from receiving. Let's get the 45, 60. Hey, we could really use like 75 now.
Yeah. Yeah. And now your business cash flow is way better.
Night and day.
Yeah.
It helped us get out of like a debt situation because we're talking about all like the great stuff now, like now that we're on the other side of the fence, but there were some very crushing moments, believe me.
Yeah.
And we made some.
It wasn't easy the whole time, Kareem. It's not just been all win after win after win.
Really bad decisions. Like not like nothing I can really fault us for, but like, there was a point where we're really feeling ourselves and we started to release these like really expensive, collections, and we invested so much in them and they got stuck and we like kind of like, we didn't rely on our data. It was like one of the few times that we didn't actually just like, we made a play off of gut rather than data. And boy, did we learn from that. Like since then we've been maybe erring too much on the side of like being conservative with how we go about like merchandising. But yeah, the company is bootstrapped, so we rely a lot on inventory financing, and we got into a little bit of a hole at one point, and that's kind of that was also part of the impetus of like sitting down, really tightening up the unit economics, figuring out we had growth, so we always had demand, we always had growth, and that was able to cover our ass, so to speak. But you can't rely on that forever because especially as you scale up into the 8 figures and beyond. At some point you're going to hit a wall, your business is going to taper, especially with us having such a kind of like a limited market here in the US, having to rely on other means. Like opening the store is a huge way for us to like expand our TAM or, our CLV or whatever, just like expand our revenue container. Going into overseas markets is another way for us to like, we're doing it already with stuff like Global E and whatnot, but like, there are more direct ways to actually like expand the container internationally. So anyway, it was, there was a lot of pain that we're even still to this day, still climbing out of. At least now, like we're soaring, but it was necessary to kind of do all these things. Otherwise the business would have, it might have went under. So.
Okay, I want to respect your time. I want to leave space for one question I like to ask smart operators, which is just, is there anything super top of mind burning for you right now? Something you're hot on, something like that? It could be totally unrelated to anything we've talked about, just that you think other people should hear while you've got a little audience here.
2 things. One is like retail. We probably could have gone into it a little bit sooner. It's been incredible for the business. The performance is just insane. And then the other thing is, GEO, I think, is the future of generative engine optimization, ranking your brand for the LLMs. I would just say go onto like ChatGPT Atlas that just released and put in your website and have it find a product. Like for us, I asked, recommend a winter hijab, and just watch it. It starts to pilot and take over and click around your website and navigate your website. And just watch how it tries to find things on your website, and just look how inefficient your website is in terms of indexing for the LLM. So I think that is something that a lot of operators should start to focus on as LLMs start to take up more of a share of traffic.
Okay, we're going to need to do a how-to episode next time you come on so you can walk people through that, because I think there's a lot there. That's really good. You have an incubator and a 3PL. Talk about both while we wrap up so people know how you can actually help them grow and do the same thing, because you guys are doing all kinds of cool stuff beyond Veiled.
Yeah, we've been working with businesses that are starting from scratch and more like a venture studio style, offering managed services in return for equity and also investing a little bit of cash. So if you have a new e-commerce brand and you're looking for help there, we can have a conversation. And then we also have a 3PL based out here on the East Coast, run by operators for operators. So if you need that, we can also talk. YNK.com.
I was going to say ynkincubator.com. The link for that is in the show notes, in the show description. So if you didn't catch that, don't worry about it. Just go to the show notes if you're on Spotify or Apple, or if you're watching us on YouTube, in the description, and you can get that there. By the way, while you're at it, you should subscribe. Obviously, I'm so bad at this. I never tell people to subscribe or like it or comment, but go do all those things too. It'll help me make more content. Kareem, thanks for your time so much. I appreciate it a lot. This was a great conversation.
Andrew, my
open invite. I'm just going to put it publicly. You've got the come back anytime card.
I appreciate that. You're the man. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, thanks. The more I talked with Kareem, the more I understood why my good friend Sam Mendelson introduced me to Kareem and said, this guy's a guy you got to talk to. I just loved that conversation. Clearly a guy who's hammering away at all the core things that drive value in his business, and doing that while delivering a product that his customers really value and really care about. Really cool story. I love that conversation. If you want to follow up, don't forget to do that with Kareem and his team. The links again that we mentioned are in the show notes for that, so you can go check that out. And if you want to follow up with me, email me at podcast@ajfgrowth.com, and go to ajfgrowth.com if you're interested in working with AJF Growth for your growth needs in the future, digital marketing, Facebook ads needs, that sort of thing. And as I said, don't forget to subscribe wherever you watch or listen. All kinds of great conversations still coming up, including I got the founders of Popsmith, who have a crazy story that you're going to want to hear about how close they got to dying and how well they're doing now, and the personal chaos that came with that. Just crazy. So definitely don't want to miss that interview. Taylor Holiday and I are really working on getting these monthly conversations going. So if you like those conversations, you're not going to want to miss that, and subscribe. Patrick Adu and I, my business partner, COO, we're doing monthly conversations now. Lots of good stuff coming. You know where to find it. You know where to get it all. It's right here on your feed. So subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. I'll see you next time.